Have you ever noticed how some people just seem to navigate challenges effortlessly, always kind of coming out on top? What if the blueprint for that kind of enduring success, whether it's, business, conflict, or just everyday life, was actually laid out thousands of years ago? Today, we're taking the deep dive, your shortcut to truly understanding complex subjects without getting bogged down in endless reading. Our subject today isn't just a book, it's more like a strategic blueprint. It's been secretly whispered in boardrooms and debated in war colleges for millennia. Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Erdona. We're going to be drawing heavily from Lionel Giles' classic translation, but our mission isn't just to recite its wisdom. We're here to decode why these ancient principles remain so shockingly potent today, help you gain quick, thorough knowledge, maybe even an aha moment or two without, information overload. Okay, let's really unpack the genius behind it.
It's pretty wild, isn't it? Most people just think the art of war is about, well, military stuff. But its influence stretches way beyond the battlefield. I mean, his wisdom applies to almost everything, hammering out a tough business deal, even just making smart choices day to day. It just transcends its original context so beautifully.
It really does. And Sun Tzu kicks off with this statement that immediately grabs you. The art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a road either to safety or to ruin. I mean, he's not messing around, is he? This isn't a game. It's existential, right from chapter 1.
Absolutely. And to guide this incredibly weighty endeavor, Sun Tzu introduces what he calls the 5 constant factors that you simply must consider. First, he talks about the moral law. That's essentially the unity and alignment of the people with their leadership. Imagine a company where everyone truly believes in the mission, pulling in the same direction. It's kind of it. Then there's heaven, which means understanding the natural environment. Weather, time of day, seasons. It's about letting nature work for you, not against you. And he also includes earth, which is the terrain itself, the commander's virtues and method and discipline in the ranks. It's a really comprehensive framework.
Right. So from those fundamental factors, he then lays out the 7 considerations for forecasting victory or defeat. These include asking, which leader has that moral law? Which general has the most ability? Where do advantages from heaven and earth lie? The big takeaway, as he puts it, is that many calculations lead to victory, few to defeat. It really emphasizes deep preparation over just impulsive action, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And that thorough preparation leads to one of the most famously quoted principles from the text. All warfare is based on deception. And Sun Tzu doesn't just say it, he gives us specific ways to execute it. Like, when you're able to attack, you must seem unable. When you're near, make the enemy believe you're far away, and vice versa. Think about, say, a major tech company launching a seemingly minor feature, quietly testing the waters while their real big bet is being developed in secret. Or maybe a startup subtly hinting at one product direction to deter competitors while they're aggressively building something entirely different. That's Sun Tzu's deception playing out today, making your opponent look right when they're actually looking left.
That idea of controlling perception is brilliant, but Sun Tzu quickly pivots from the abstract to the utterly practical, doesn't he? When he starts talking about waging war, he hits you with the cost. I mean, 1,000 ounces of silver per day for 100,000 men. That's just staggering to imagine, even today. What kind of impact did that sort of economic reality have on his strategic thinking?
Oh, it shaped everything. He's incredibly blunt about it. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. He saw the evils of war, weapons growing dull, morale damping, strength exhausting, and external opportunists seizing the moment. It wasn't just about the financial drain, it was about the complete erosion of a state's vitality, impoverishing the people, draining national substance. It's truly a lose-lose scenario in the long run.
So the counter strategy has to be maximum efficiency, right? He explains that the skillful soldier does not raise a second levy, neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice. And to minimize the drain on your own resources, you forage on the enemy. The logistics of efficiency are starkly laid out. 1 cartload of the enemy's provisions, he writes, is equivalent to 20 of one's own.
Wow! Exactly. And this efficiency extends even to personnel. Sun Tzu advises using the conquered foe to augment one's own strength, treating captured soldiers kindly, incorporating their resources, like chariots. The overarching aim is a swift, decisive victory, not lengthy campaigns. It's about leveraging what's already there, on the field, rather than constantly pouring in new resources.
That leads us nicely to what Sun Tzu considers the supreme excellence in attack by stratagem, which is breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. This isn't just about avoiding a fight. It's about achieving your objectives with such minimal friction that, well, direct confrontation becomes unnecessary. It's a powerful idea.
It truly is. And he lays out a crystal clear hierarchy for generalship based on the principle, the absolute gold standard. To
Right.
completely thwart the enemy's plans before they even begin. That's the best. Next best is preventing their forces from uniting. Then, attacking them in the field. And the very, very worst policy of all, besieging walled cities.
So basically, avoid anything that involves banging your head against a wall, literally. He really hammers home how disastrous sieges are, estimating 6 months of prep, and even then, you could lose a third of your men, town still untaken. He contrasts this with the masterful leader who subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations. That's true strategic elegance.
Precisely. And this mastery hinges on what he calls the 5 essentials for victory. 2 that really stand out are knowing precisely when to fight and when not to fight, and ensuring your army is animated by the same spirit throughout all ranks. It's about self-awareness, unity, and strategic patience.
And this brings us to arguably his most famous dictum: if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. My first thought when I hear that is, okay, gathering intelligence, like spies and reports. But are we talking about something deeper here? Does he mean like a more profound self-awareness or understanding psychological warfare beyond just gathering facts?
You've hit on a critical point there. It's not just about intelligence reports, lists of numbers or troop movements. It's about comprehensive understanding of your own strengths, weaknesses, capabilities, even your temperament. And then, a nuanced understanding of your opponent's similar attributes, their motivations, their likely reactions. This understanding leads directly into tactical dispositions, where the emphasis is on putting yourself beyond the possibility of defeat before even seeking to defeat the enemy. Your security, in this view, is entirely in your own hands, while the opportunity to defeat the enemy is often provided by their missteps, their errors.
Okay, so you're strong in defense when you have insufficient strength. But you only go on the offensive when you have a superabundance of strength. It's a clear distinction about posture, about when to act.
It really is. The clever fighter, Sun Tzu says, wins with ease, makes no mistakes, and only seeks battle after the victory has been won. Which sounds a bit paradoxical, but it connects to this powerful progression of military method. Measurement, estimation, calculation, balancing of chances, and ultimately victory. Each step builds on the last, ensuring certainty, almost making victory inevitable before the engagement even begins.
He uses such vivid analogies to illustrate this point. A victorious army opposed to a routed one, he writes, is as a pound's weight placed in the scale against a single grain. Just overwhelming, and the onrush of a conquering force. Like the bursting of pent-up waters into a chasm 1,000 fathoms deep. It's about overwhelming force, yeah, but applied with surgical precision. Let's turn our attention now to energy. How does Sun Tzu advise managing the momentum and impact of truly massive forces? He talks about doing it by dividing up their numbers and then instituting signs and signals like gongs, drums, banners, flags to focus the entire host on one particular point. It's about creating order and unified action out of, well, potential chaos.
That unification is key. It's key to understanding the core concept of direct and indirect methods in battle. The direct method is for engaging, for meeting the enemy head-on. But it's the indirect methods that actually secure victory. Sun Tzu stresses that indirect tactics are inexhaustible as heaven and earth, unending as the flow of rivers and streams. He even draws parallels to musical notes, primary colors, cardinal tastes, highlighting how a few basic elements, when combined indirectly, create infinite possibilities. It's about infinite permutations from finite parts.
So what does this all mean for applying direct and indirect methods? It's just an endless series of maneuvers that never come to an end. It's about constant adaptation and combination, isn't it? Never being predictable.
Exactly. This dynamic leads to the idea that simulated disorder postulates perfect discipline. Simulated fear postulates courage. Simulated weakness postulates strength. It's all about tactical dispositions that hide your true intent and capability, making the enemy misinterpret your state or, simply making assumptions that benefit you.
The clever combatant, then, doesn't rely too much on individual strength, but rather on the effect of combined energy. He gives a great analogy for this. It's like rolling logs or stones. Round stones roll down a slope naturally, four-cornered ones stop. It's about leveraging that natural tendency for momentum when the right conditions are met, creating the slope, essentially.
Which brings us neatly to weak points and strong. Sun Tzu advises that whoever is first in the field and awaits the coming of the enemy will be fresh for the fight. Makes sense. The clever combatant imposes his will on the enemy. He doesn't allow the enemy to impose their will on him. This puts you in a position of control, dictating the terms of engagement.
And he gives very concrete ways to impose that will. Hold out advantages to draw the enemy in, or inflict damage to keep them away. You harass them if they're at ease, starve them if they're well supplied, or force them to move if they're just sitting there and camped. It's all about creating uncomfortable choices for your opponent, forcing their hand.
And critically, it's about attacking undefended places and holding positions that cannot be attacked. Sun Tzu calls this the divine art of subtlety and secrecy, allowing a general to be invisible and inaudible. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Holding the enemy's fate in his hands because they can't predict him. This isn't literal invisibility, naturally, but strategic opacity.
Right, that subtlety helps you concentrate your forces while inherently dividing the enemies. If you keep your dispositions secret, the enemy has to guess, has to spread out, making them weak everywhere. If he sends reinforcements everywhere, as Sun Tzu says, he will everywhere be weak.
Which brings us back to that famous water analogy from Tactical Dispositions. Remember, water shapes its course according to the nature of the ground over which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe whom he is facing. The profound takeaway here is that in warfare there are no constant conditions. Adaptation is paramount. Almost like water finding its path, constantly adjusting.
That idea of adapting to circumstances really comes to life in the chapter on maneuvering. Sun Tzu talks about turning the devious into the direct and misfortune into gain. He explains the artifice of deviation, taking a long, circuitous route, maybe enticing the enemy out of the way, but then contriving to arrive at the goal before them. It's a trick of perceived speed, isn't it? Making the long way seem short, strategically.
It absolutely is. But he's also very clear, very practical about the perils of forced marches undertaken just for advantage. Trying to cover, say, 100 lits in the forced march could mean only 1/10 of your army actually reaching its destination. The rest fall behind or are lost. He stresses the critical importance of a baggage train, provisions, bases of supply. Without them, an army is lost. It's that classic strategic tension. Speed versus sustainability. You can't just rush blindly.
You also have to understand the environment, right? He emphasizes the need to be familiar with the country. Its mountains and forests, its pitfalls and precipices, its marshes and swamps, and to use local guides to truly turn that natural advantage to account. It's knowing your landscape intimately.
And in terms of how an army should move and appear and maneuver, Sun Tzu has these incredible descriptions, almost poetic. Its rapidity should be that of the wind, its compactness that of the forest. In raiding and plundering, it should be like fire, but its immovability should be like a mountain. Plans should be dark and impenetrable as night, and when it moves, it should fall like a thunderbolt. Powerful imagery, but also highly practical advice.
He even touches on troop morale in the army on the march, noting that a soldier's spirit is keenest in the morning. By noonday, it has begun to flag, and in the evening, his mind is bent only on returning to camp. It's such a simple yet profound observation about human nature, about energy levels.
It truly is. And a clever general uses this knowledge. Avoids an army when its spirit is keen, but attacks it when it's sluggish, when it's thinking of home. This is part of the art of studying circumstances. For example, not attacking an enemy whose formation is perfect and disciplined, or not pursuing an enemy who simulates flight too eagerly could be a trap. And crucially, leaving an outlet free when surrounding an army, giving them a chance to flee rather than fight to the death, or not interfering with an army returning home, their motivation is just too strong. It's about anticipating human psychology under pressure.
This leads us into variation in tactics. While the general receives commands from the sovereign, the ruler back home, there are commands which must not be obeyed if victory isn't assured, if conditions on the ground make them suicidal. It's about understanding when to deviate from the rule, when the larger goal, victory, outweighs rigid adherence to orders.
And this ties directly into the 5 dangerous faults which may affect a general. These are critical. Recklessness, which leads to destruction. Cowardice, leading to capture. A hasty temper, easily provoked into rash moves. A delicacy of honor, meaning too sensitive to shame, perhaps leading to stubbornness. And over-solicitude for his men, which exposes him to worry and indecision. These aren't just personality quirks. Sun Tzu sees them as potentially fatal flaws that can ruin the entire war effort.
He also dedicates an entire section to terrain, outlining 6 kinds and how different landscapes demand different approaches. For instance, on accessible ground easy for both sides, you should quickly occupy the raised sunny spots first, get the high ground. But on entangling terrain where it's easy to get in but hard to get out, you should rush to leave it behind if the enemy isn't there. Avoid getting trapped. He's so granular in his advice.
He is. And this understanding of terrain culminates in the 9 situations or types of ground, different psychological states based on location. Think about dispersive ground, which is like fighting on home territory where troops might naturally want to scatter back to their homes there. He warns, fight not, don't risk it. But then there's desperate ground, where your back is against the wall, no escape, your very survival is at stake. And on that ground, he says, fight. You have no other choice. This raises an important question, doesn't it? How does understanding your immediate environment, your situation, completely dictate your very next move?
Speaking of decisive action, let's talk about the attack by fire. A bit grim, but strategically significant. Sun Tzu outlines several ways to use fire: burning enemy camps, their stores, their baggage trains, arsenals, or simply dropping incendiaries among them. It's a truly brutal but undeniably effective tactic in ancient warfare.
And he's incredibly practical about it, even down to the conditions. You need to keep the material for raising fire, always in readiness. Choose the proper season, when the weather is very dry. And pick special days, when the moon is in the constellations of the sieve, the wall, the wing, or the crossbar. Why? Because these 4 are all days of rising wind. It's about precise timing and conditions, leveraging nature itself to maximize the effect.
And once fire breaks out, you need to know how to respond. There are 5 possible developments, whether that's attacking from without while the fire rages within, or simply biding your time if the enemy remains quiet and orderly despite the fire. It's all about rapid, effective follow-up, exploiting the chaos caused by the flames.
But beyond these specific tactics, Sun Tzu emphasizes an overarching wisdom, a kind of strategic restraint. Move not unless you see an advantage. Use not your troops unless there is something to be gained. Fight not unless the position is critical. He warns explicitly against fighting purely out of spleen or pique. In other words, don't engage just because you're angry or annoyed or feel slighted. It's a powerful call for disciplined, objective-driven action.
He brings it home with a stark reminder about the ultimate stakes involved in war. A kingdom that has once been destroyed can never come again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. It's chillingly final. Hence, an enlightened ruler is heedful and a good general full of caution. The consequences are irreversible.
And this caution, this need for certainty, leads us to the absolutely crucial role of the use of spies. This section is fascinating. Sun Tzu frames it by highlighting the immense cost of war, all those silver ounces we talked about, all those families impeded back home, and then states that to remain in ignorance of the enemy's conditions simply because one grudges the outlay of 100 ounces of silver is the height of inhumanity. And what enables victory, what prevents that waste? It's foreknowledge. And this knowledge, he insists, can only be obtained from other men. It doesn't come from spirits or calculations alone.
So he breaks down what he calls the 5 classes of spies. It's quite a system. There are the local spies, which are basically inhabitants of a district you use, inward spies, who are officials of the enemy you've managed to employ. But what really caught my eye were the converted spies. These are enemy spies you've turned, double agents, essentially. And the doomed spies, who are your own spies sent to carry false tidings to the enemy, knowing they might not make it back. Finally, surviving spies are those who bring back actual news from the enemy's camp. How do these different types fit together?
He calls managing this network the divine manipulation of the threads, because they all work in concert, ideally. He states that none in the whole army are more intimate relations to be maintained than with spies, and none should be more liberally rewarded. Makes sense, given the risk. And in no other business should greater secrecy be preserved. He highlights the need for a general to have certain qualities to manage them effectively: intuitive sagacity, benevolence and straightforwardness, and subtle ingenuity of mind. The converted spy especially is paramount. They're often the nexus. It's through them you can acquire and employ local and inward spies, cause doomed spies to carry false tidings accurately, and utilize surviving spies effectively based on the intel the converted spy provides. They're the key link.
It's all about that unseen leverage, that hidden network providing crucial information.
Exactly. Ultimately, Sun Tzu concludes this section with a truly intriguing statement. Spies are the most important element in water because on them depends an army's ability to move. It speaks to their foundational role, like a crucial, unseen element within a flowing system, the water being the army or the campaign. They determine the very momentum and direction of your forces. Without that intelligence,
Love
without
that.
spies, you're essentially brined, stagnant water.
We've covered such an incredible breadth of Sun Tzu's wisdom today,
Wow.
from grand strategy and the power of deception, uh, down to the practicalities of logistics, understanding terrain, managing troop morale, and the unseen but undeniable power of intelligence and spies. It's truly a masterclass in strategic thinking.
What's fascinating here, and what keeps bringing people back to this text, is how these ancient insights illuminate modern challenges. Whether you're navigating a competitive market, leading a team, negotiating a contract, or even making personal decisions. The principles of knowing yourself, understanding your environment, avoiding unnecessary conflict, and the profound impact of subtle, well-informed action remain incredibly relevant. It's really about achieving objectives with elegance, with intelligence, not just brute force.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Sun Tzu's Art of War isn't just some dusty historical text, it's a living guide. It teaches us that true victory often comes not from overwhelming power, but from wisdom, preparation, and understanding the dynamics at play before you even act. So here's a final thought to chew on. If Sun Tzu teaches us that true victory is achieved without fighting, and that the path to success lies in knowing yourself and your opponent so deeply, where else in your world, maybe in your career, your relationships, your projects, might you be able to achieve victory by truly understanding the dynamics at play rather than just rushing in? Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.